Oh my goodness, we're going to be associated with Donald Trump. Yeah, the most successful politician in the world. Why didn't you want to be associated with him again? I can't remember. Oh, yes,
well,
because Labour told you and you fell into the trap. Walked straight into it because Labour and the ABC played you like a fiddle.
Donald Trump talked about Mark Carney today in a new interview and totally called him out for the fraud that he is. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. It is more important than ever to comment your thoughts down below, like the video, share the video to anybody you think it may impact, and of course, subscribe to the channel, follow on other social media platforms as well. And I'm going to share some thoughts with you guys that I've had for a very long time, but I have not been totally honest with because I've been very scared of the backlash. But this is getting to a point now where there are too many things that are uncomfortably odd and so very important to discuss and reflect upon. We're going to be fact-checking the CBC, talking about some eerie similarities with Australia right now, and also sharing the reality of what the Liberals intend to do in Canada, and how they're going about misleading the average Canadian from not knowing what the truth is. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
What the Liberal Party did by dumping a sitting Prime Minister, suspending Parliament, having a rush leadership race with a new leader without really the time for Canadians to get to know, all under the threat of a U.S. Tariffs that dominated the news cycle. I mean, these are conditions that the Liberals should not count on happening again. Whereas our new voters are voting for us because of policies, because they see in our party a solution to the cost of living crisis, to the fact that their communities aren't as safe, the fact that they can't afford to own a home and move out of their parents' basement. So I'm incredibly optimistic about our ability to build off of our gains this time, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to finish the job in the next level.
Right, but your party may not be able to rely on post-COVID inflation crisis that was fueled by war in the breadbasket of Europe and supply.
This clip has been going viral, and honestly, it has been really weird to see the Liberals on other social media platforms lately. The things that they're sharing and saying, I just have such a hard time believing that it's real people, and it's much more probable that there's no way people are actually that stupid and that this is a coordinated attack from a foreign entity or something. I don't know. But essentially, what David Cochrane is doing here is he is trying to gaslight Canadians into thinking that inflation was not a result of anything other than Russia invading Ukraine, which is just like, what? Here's the thing, though. So this is actually from Brad Mills. I'm going to have him on the show. I wanted to chat with him yesterday so I could have him in today's episode, but I ended up being busier than planned. But I will have him on the show to dive into this a lot deeper. But he had actually put together this chart here that shows the consumer price inflation, and then it also shows Canada's monetary base, and it goes to show just how much money was created. Okay, so we have this here first and foremost. We'll deep dive much deeper into this once we finish this clip.
David, you know this. You know that inflation is caused when governments print money.
Well,
That's what the Liberals did. The Liberals flooded the economy with brand new cash. It has nothing to do.
They spent money, they didn't print money. The Bank of Canada did not increase the number of banknotes in circulation in the economy. They used settlement balances. They used settlement balances to buy government bonds to put liquidity. I'm not being dishonest.
They created money out of thin air. They massively expanded the money supply. You know this.
They did not permanently increase the money supply, Mr. Scheer. But anyway, I don't want to have an argument on monetary policy. They used settlement balances to buy bonds, to lower interest rates, put liquidity into the banking system, and then they remove those settlement balances over time. So,
are you denying that there is more currency, whether it's digital or real, in the Canadian economy today? Are you denying?
I'm saying they use settlement balances, and you're calling it money. There may be a small marginal increase, but it is not the anyway. Everybody had all right.
But wait, there's more, and it has been unbelievable to see just how uneducated most people are, especially when it comes to inflation. And that's fair, to be honest. I'm no economist. I just research things and then I learn. So it's fine if you don't know all the ins and outs of this kind of stuff. But it's also very easy to figure it out and to educate yourself. And clearly people don't. But David Cochrane, after having Andrew Scheer taken off the call, doubled down on this even more. And we are about to blast him.
I just want to explain so the audience understands. Settlement balances. It's a technique you use to buy government bonds. It lowers interest rates, puts liquidity in the banks. It does temporarily increase money supply, but unlike when you print banknotes, you can draw these back and then reduce money supply. So it's almost like a back of the house increase to make the banks feel secure. And at the time of COVID, you needed to cut rates and free up money from lending because people were desperate. But the settlement balance can be pulled back in a quantitative tightening phase, and it is not a permanent increase in the money supply, which is printing money, which causes inflation. It's different.
The leader of the party that I support is a former governor of the Bank of Canada.
He would understand what you're saying.
And he would understand that. And the person who just spoke, his leader wanted to fire the governor of the Bank of Canada. So I know who I'm going to believe.
Sure.
Unbiased, they say. Wow, that is so unbelievably yikes. And unfortunately for us, the CBC has secured even more money now. So that's just awesome. However, I guess it does make for good content. Now, here's the thing, though. David Cochrane is incredibly misleading there because he is claiming, and he's trying to deflect, I suppose, that they didn't literally run printing presses for cash. That's a total straw man argument there. Nice try, though, because his phrasing does make it sound like expanding settlement balances is harmless and it's not inflationary, which completely ignores how a deficit-financed government spends and interacts with the real economy. So to say, oh, well, they didn't actually print any money because it was done via bonds and reserves is kind of like, I don't know, saying I didn't gain weight. I just ate 5,000 calories of smoothies, instead of cake. So I'm totally healthy. That's totally fine. So Andrew Scheer there was not incorrect. He was perhaps a little oversimplified by just saying, oh, it's printing money, because it is. I mean, like, it really is kind of the same thing with just like a couple of other fancy words there, but the end result is the same. So when the Bank of Canada increases their settlement balances, which are reserves held by commercial banks, it does so by creating government bonds with newly created central bank money. And I actually got this comment about this post on X from John, who said, it's another half-truth. If they had drawn it back, David would be right about its effect, but they didn't. So it is the same as printing money. Either the fine point went over David's head, or he's being devious, maybe both. And we have another comment from Jason, who said, calling it not money printing is technically correct, but it's a semantic distinction. The Bank of Canada bought government debt using newly created reserves, functionally similar to printing money when it's used to finance Trudeau's historic deficits. Settlement balances alone didn't cause inflation, but combined with runaway spending, they poured fuel on the fire. Monetary and fiscal policy overheated the economy together.
Bringing together labor, business, and civil society to advance the nation-building investments that will transform our economy. In the coming weeks, I will unveil more of our plans to engage with Canadians as we embark on the biggest transformation of our economy since the end of the Second World War. This will be an incredibly exciting time as we take control of our economic destiny to create a new Canadian economy that works for everyone.
I can certainly see people who would hear this and think, oh my gosh, finally, we have somebody, our economy is going to be so great. But unfortunately, Mark Carney's vision for a new economy that'll be so much greater than its historic since the Second World War is literally based on nothing other than a theory that has failed, and it signals a radical top-down restructuring of Canada's economic foundation, which is built on climate central policy, centralized finance, and also globalist principles. And it becomes very questionable and completely falls apart also when you look into the reality of that. Mark Carney has said so many times that, oh, well, in order to trade with Europe and Asia, we're going to have to, have carbon border taxes, carbon credits, all those things. We need to have even more green infrastructure spending. Oh, we should get central bank digital currencies. I've said this many times before. Mark Carney's previous position was lobbying and putting pressure on governments in order to enact green changes in their economy that benefited his interests.
Not many Canadians know there's an electric vehicle mandate in place right now. It was without a debate in Parliament that says by 2035, you can no longer buy in Canada a hybrid or gas car, you have to buy an electric automobile. It was quietly put in place by the Environmental Minister, Guilbeault, in the last Parliament, and he just changed SEPA, the Environmental Protection Act. And all they did was said that all vehicles made in Canada have to have zero emissions. It's an example where government thinks they know best. And, you know, the examples we give of why this doesn't work, not only with the cold climate we have here and rural Canadians who, you know, need their vehicles, but Peterborough just had a powder outage 3 weeks ago. It was one of the only Sundays we didn't door knock, and power was out for 5 days. At that point, you don't have a car if you have an electric vehicle and you can't power it. It's an example where government thinks they know best. Or our alternative is, if you as a family believe that you want an electric vehicle, then buy one. Make sure you get the adapter in your home. As a government, our job is to make sure the infrastructure is there, the power grid, you know, if we need whatever that power supply is. But it's not to tell you to buy that vehicle. And that's the difference in a nutshell between Conservatives and Liberal governments.
It was not based on there being a real crisis, a real move to these things. The move to these things was implemented by people like Mark Carney, like his wife, Diana Fox Carney, like their daughter, Cleo, and like many others in the space who are doing this because it is literally a grift. And let's just get some things straight here, because you're going to keep hearing Mark Carney say this over and over and over again. He has explicitly refused to reverse policies like the No More Pipelines Law, Bill C-69, Bill C-18, and all of these things that have absolutely crippled investment in the private sector, undermined productivity, and fueled inflation. And while Mark Carney will tell you the exact opposite, the facts are, and this is well documented, that investment in renewables is slowing. It is not growing. Also, Germany and the UK are reversing course on net zero targets, many of which, by the way, were influenced by Mark Carney, because the costs are too high and voters are pushing back because they're tired of having blackouts. Global reliance on coal and oil is increasing, especially in Asia. This lie that it's going to, create all of these new jobs, we're going to be an economic superpower, it has failed elsewhere. It has been implemented in other parts of the world. It has also been implemented in Canada. And how has that been going for us so far? Job creation through wind, solar, even battery production has absolutely not been this amazing thing, as people like Mark Carney keep telling you that it is. It is not true. That's not actually happening. Could that happen in maybe another 50 years? Possibly. For right now, though, it's nothing. It's nothing. Literally every country that has ever gone to a rapid decarbonization leads to energy insecurity and to inflation. So by all accounts, my assumption of what Mark Carney's actually doing here is the transformation he's talking about is just to create an even more heavily controlled economy where everything is centralized, mobility is limited, and behavior is regulated through things like financial systems, through ESG scoring, through you not being able to live the life that you should, by all accounts, be able to live, that other countries are able to provide for their citizens because they have rejected this nonsense. And this is absolutely just another technocratic form of management. It is following the globalist playbook without a doubt, and climate policy is often used as a justification for unprecedented and unbelievable economic and social controls. This post by Bratney actually pretty much sums it up. It says, net zero doesn't mean we don't have emissions. It means we offset our carbon output with carbon credits. Net zero. So basically, Carney plans to capitalize off Canadians who live in -40 and +40, buy the green bucks, and atone for the sin of surviving the elements.
It's not science, it's politics. I've been listening to this bullshit for 50 years. In the 60s, it was oil will be gone in 10 years. In the 70s, it was another ice age in 10 years. In the 80s, it was acid rain will destroy all the crops in 10 years. In the 90s, it was the ozone layer will be destroyed in 10 years. In the 2000s, it was the glaciers will all melt in 10 years. In the 2010s, it was the east and west coast will be underwater from rising sea levels in 10 years. None of this fear-mongering nonsense came true, but it did result in higher taxes. every time.
Switching over to Australia, they just had another election that was eerily similar to that of Canada, where their Labour Party, which is the equivalent of our Liberal Party, decided to use Donald Trump as the factor to get elected.
But Rita's right, James, that all the wrong lessons are already being taken out of this. It's Donald Trump and blah, 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 all that stuff. The reality is they did not fight to tear down. This government, this Labor government, as Rita was saying, is absolutely atrocious. They're going to be taxing our unrealised super gains now. We're going to have more of this renewables madness. This country is going to go down the gurgler economically with Jimbo's ridiculous thing. And all those people in Australia who have been let down by this Liberal Party, so badly let down. The Nationals, by the way, all held their seats, so there's a lesson there.
Just a heads up, by the way, the Liberal Party in Australia is essentially their Conservative Party, and they are a centre-right party, arguably more of a center-left party, which some would also perhaps paint the Conservatives in Canada as. And the Labour Party is actually what their liberal, very, very, very far left party is. There was a lot of similarities in this election, though, that are very odd. Everything from the polling projections of who was going to win to Donald Trump being a major factor in their economy and a crisis. I mean, listen to this election-winning speech compared to Mark Carney's.
Australians have chosen to face global challenges the Australian way, looking after each other while building for the future.
It's a time to be bold, to meet this crisis with overwhelming positive force of a united Canada. Because we are going to build, baby, build, to look out for ourselves. And above all, we have to take care of each other.
And even more similarities, their opposition leader also lost his seat, just like Pierre Poilievre did. Now, I'm not claiming to have any answers. I'm not even outright accusing anybody of anything. I am simply sharing with you my observations that I have at times felt hesitant to share, thanks to articles like this by CTV News, something that has also very much been a narrative on other mainstream media platforms as well, which we will dive deeper into in tomorrow's episode. But this article read that 3/4 of Canadians say misinformation affected the federal election. It went on in more detail to say Liberal supporters were the least likely to think misinformation had a role in the election at 74% compared to 83% of Conservative voters and 87% of NDP voters. The article contents consisted of essentially saying that Conservatives are the most likely to think that there was some funky business that happened here. This is something I've put a lot of thought into because I don't want to be one of those people who gets painted by this brush. I try my best to really think, to research a lot before I present any opinions to you. But there is definitely something here that is very, very interesting, to say the least. I've been comparing results from the Liberal leadership race in certain ridings to the federal election results in certain ridings. That article by CTV was something that really got me thinking. I just shared this in my group chat, so I'll read it to you verbatim. But I wrote, plus CTV posted a story today about Conservative voters who think the election is rigged. Why would that even be a polling question that a pollster would do? I don't think they've ever asked that question post-election before, which leads me to think that this sounds like they're getting ahead of the narrative to get a head start on shaming genuine questions that may or may not come up when and if people look into this. The article, of which similar topics were discussed on CBC and have absolutely taken over Liberal social media accounts as well, sounds an awful lot like narrative creation and dissent suppression to me. Why do people do that? Because they know something's about to break and they want you to already have an opinion that they've chosen about it so that you don't pay it any time and immediately dismiss it. Now, I am going to be sharing more of my insights about the results from the Liberal leadership race as well as this election in tomorrow's episode. But the one thing that I just can't seem to get out of my mind is why on earth would Mark Carney, a man who has been selected and appointed for every position he's held in his adult life, why would he, for the first time ever, choose to run in an election if he was not completely certain that he would win? Why would he do that? Again, I don't have the answers. I am just posing the question. I'm posing some of my speculation. All of this seems incredibly odd. And even more so that Donald Trump today was talking about Mark Carney and flat out said that Mark Carney's entire election campaign was based on a lie.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau, I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that, without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be. It would be great. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us. They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything.
But not with Canada? I think it's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
I would certainly love to know what you think about that one. I have more thoughts, of which I will share with you tomorrow, especially after I let the news cycle do their business and see how it is that they try to spin their way and lie their way out of this one. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Over Opinionated. Be sure to follow, subscribe, like, comment your thoughts down below, because Mark Carney is coming after us independents. That's another story in tomorrow's episode that we will dive into. So truly, not just myself, everybody on this space who you watch, we really do need your support more than ever. Because I don't like to say it out loud, but it's uneasy. I feel uneasy. That's probably the best way to summarize it. But hey, I do have an episode for you tomorrow. I'm not shut down yet. So I will talk to you then. I hope you had a beautiful weekend, and ta-ta for now.